a friendly face behind a webcam, the voice anime fans turned to for honest reviews and recommendations. Mr. Anime, a rising star in the early days of the YouTube world. But what if the boy next door, the one geeking out over anime, was also quietly plotting a massacre? This isn't just a tale of obsession gone wrong. It's a disturbing journey into a mind that once thrived behind a screen and then destroyed everything in its way. What happened when the lights turned off and the camera stopped rolling? On the quiet afternoon of Tuesday, March 20th, 2012, in the small town of Waller, Texas, the Sessler home became the site of an unthinkable tragedy, one that would shock not just the local community, but ripple across the very internet fandom Trey Eric Sessler once thrived in. Before 1 p.m., Trey calmly lured his mother, Rhonda Sessler, into the garage. There, without hesitation, he raised a shotgun and fired 4 times at point-blank range. The blast was merciless that his mother collapsed to the ground. She never stood a chance. Inside the house, his father was still asleep, unaware that the first of many gunshots had just ended his wife's life. With eerie composure, Trey re-entered the house and turned his weapon on his younger brother, Mark. The first shot didn't kill him. Mark, wounded and terrified, stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door, desperately trying to escape his brother's wrath. But there would be no escape. Trey broke the door down and finished what he started, this time using a pistol to ensure Mark wouldn't survive. The commotion finally woke up his father, Lawton Sessler. Confused and alarmed, he rose, only to be met with gunfire. Trey shot him too, completing the brutal execution of the very people who raised him, loved him, and supported his dreams. But Trey wasn't finished. After killing his entire family, he walked through the blood-stained home, scrawling messages across the walls, haunting, heartbreaking confessions like, "I love my mom, dad, and brother, and God forgive me because I cannot forgive myself." Words soaked with guilt that came far too late. Then, as if possessed by rage, or perhaps driven by some twisted need to destroy everything he once cherished, he began to tear apart the house. Furniture overturned, windows shattered, rooms left in shambles. What was once a family home became, in the words of Waller's police chief, Phil Rehak, a war zone. After reducing his childhood home to rubble and silence, Trey Eric Sessler wasn't finished. Not yet. With the bodies of his family lying cold behind him, he loaded his 2010 black Ford Mustang with a high-point model 995 carbine rifle and over 100 rounds of ammunition. His next destination? Waller High School, the very place he once walked the halls as a student. Now the site he'd chosen for a massacre. He parked outside, engine cooling in the quiet hum of the afternoon. The school loomed ahead of him, innocent and unaware of the horror it had narrowly escaped. Sessler sat there in the lot, gun ready, mind reeling, but something shifted. As the minutes passed, the fantasy that had festered in his mind for years suddenly collided with the chilling reality of what he had already done. The weight of his actions finally caught up to him. Trey didn't go through with the shooting. He backed out, later telling investigators that it had all just become too real. Instead of unleashing chaos at the school, he drove to a friend's home in Magnolia, Texas, possibly seeking refuge or simply a place to hide. Meanwhile, concern was growing. Friends and relatives of the Sessler family, unable to get in touch, called the police and requested a welfare check. When officers arrived at the house, what they found was a nightmare. The lifeless bodies of Trey's mother, father, and younger brother, and a home desecrated in a storm of rage and regret. An arrest warrant was issued immediately, and the manhunt began. Just hours later, at 9:30 p.m., police tracked Trey down and arrested him at the Magnolia home without resistance. During questioning, Trey offered an explanation enough to give goosebumps. He said he murdered his family because he didn't want them to be ashamed of him after the school shooting he had planned to commit. It wasn't about hate, he claimed, it was about shame. But in the end, even Trey couldn't bring himself to carry out his full plan. What he'd already done was more than enough to scar a community forever. In the days following his arrest, Trey was placed on self-harm watch. The once beloved Mr. Anime was now just Trey Sessler, the young man who annihilated the very people who loved him and nearly turned his high school into a graveyard. So let's rewind for a second. Before the headlines, before the horror, before the name Trey Eric Sessler was associated with anything other than anime. Trey was born on August 3, 1989 in Waller, Texas. Small town surrounded by a quiet neighborhood. One of those places where everybody kind of knows everybody. He grew up in a pretty normal household, nothing out of the ordinary. His mom, Rhonda, worked for the Waller Times, and his dad, Lawton, was a teacher at Robinson Elementary in the Cy-Fair School District. They'd been married for 34 years. Trey had an older brother, Mark. From the outside, they looked like a regular, tight-knit American family. But things took a turn for worse when Trey dropped out of college. Now, Trey wasn't the most popular kid in school. He went to Waller High, then later to Blinn College. He wasn't topping the class or winning any popularity contests. He was more under the radar, quiet, kept to himself. But if you asked his close friends, they'd say he was really smart, kind of quirky, sure, but sweet and soft-spoken, a little offbeat maybe. One friend even said it felt like Trey lived more in his movies than in real life. This is important because here's where things get interesting. In the early days of YouTube, when the platform was still figuring itself out, Trey created something that would give him a place and even a bit of internet fame. He became Mr. Anime. And if you were into anime back then, chances are you stumbled across one of his videos. No fancy production, no gimmicks, just Trey talking about anime. And that's what made him different. He was honest, raw even. He didn't try to play a character or be someone he wasn't. He just talked, and people listened.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Mr. Anime here. And I just wanted to say that everyone's doing a great job keeping up with my channel. Everyone's doing a great job with the video responses, the comment responses, more explosive than ever. So I just want to say, keep it up. Work's been great. Got to thank everyone who's been supportive, and I will see you soon for a new anime review.
He teamed up with other creators like Megas X1 and Al's Anime Reviews, and together they helped shape this whole online anime subculture before it was even a real thing. Trey wasn't just some guy with a webcam. He became a kind of voice for people who loved anime, but didn't really see it represented anywhere else. For a lot of fans, Mr. Anime felt like a friend, but behind that online persona, something darker was brewing. If you go back and watch Trey Eric Sessler's YouTube videos now, knowing what we know, they feel different, almost eerie, like you're watching someone slowly unravel right in front of the camera, and no one realized it at the time. On the surface, Mr. Anime came across as chill, quirky, maybe a little awkward, but harmless. He posted regularly, had a loyal fan base, and seemed genuinely excited about his interests. On Facebook, he introduced himself in the most casual, wholesome way. "I'm Trey, no nicknames or anything. I like to take it easy and have a nice time. I'm really interested in my education as a college student. My car is currently the most exciting part of my days." He even mentioned planting peppers and strawberries in the spring. Just a regular young guy, right? But if you watched closely, there were cracks, and they were starting to show. He was never shy about his growing fascination with guns. In fact, they were featured often in his videos, sometimes for humor, sometimes for show. There's one intro where he kicks open a door with a pistol in each hand and fake shoots himself using a jump cut. Then he smiles, gives a thumbs up, and rolls into a review. In another video, he holds up a rifle with a flashlight attachment and casually says, "Well, get your rifle ready, because today I'm going to review the zombie epic, High School of the Dead." And then there's a video of him out under a bridge, firing a high .9mm rifle at some bottles. Just him and his gun, and the sound of bullets echoing into the distance. He opens the video with an unsettling greeting.
Oh, how you doing, everyone? It's Mr. Anime. Or you can call me Trey. You can call me the guy that does the video game reviews. You can call me the guy that does all the gun stuff now. What I have here today to show you is a high point. Now, for those of you that are familiar with high point, you might have a very low opinion of them, or you might have a high opinion of them. I think they're pretty decent, especially for the price. I have here a very classic at $9.95. Okay, so there's this old couch always under this bridge. Don't know who put it here. Just a really old couch. That's all it is. Basically, what I'm going to do is, and this is pretty childish and ridiculous, is blow up the couch to the best of my 9mm abilities. So let's see what we can do.
The guy who does all the gun stuff now. He said it like a joke, but it wasn't. Even his health updates took a dark turn. In December 2011, he posted a video titled "Very Bad News, Please Watch."
Hi everybody, it's Trey here, aka Mr. Anime, and I guess I'm just going to cut right to the chase. No, I'm not quitting YouTube, if that's what some of you guys are thinking. But I've had a little bit of shortness of breath lately, and a little bit of back pain and stuff, and I haven't been sleeping too well. My eyes are a little swollen. That's why I'm wearing these sunshades, and it seems like I've got the diagnosis of pneumothorax. Basically, I'm leaking air from my lungs.
He wore sunglasses and quietly announced that he'd been diagnosed with a collapsed lung. Then, in a softer moment, he added, "If you're religious, I'd appreciate it if you prayed for me."
You know, I'm hoping that this is just going to be a minor deal, and that I'm not leaking that much air out of my lungs. But it could be a big deal. But I don't want to raise a red flag and be negative about it. So, if you're religious, I would appreciate it if you prayed for me. And keep watching my channel. Keep subscribing.
But then came the most haunting video of all. It was uploaded just a month before the murders, titled, "Mr. Anime is Planning Something." He didn't go into detail, he didn't explain. All he said was, "Everything is going really good. I'm going to take a 2 or 3 week break. Might do some blog videos. Thanks for watching." It sounded like nothing, just another content creator stepping back for a bit. But knowing what we know now, that line hits differently. Mr. Anime is planning something, and he was. As investigators peeled back the layers of Trey Eric Sessler's life, a darker, more disturbing picture began to emerge, one that went far beyond anime videos and internet fame. It turns out Trey had been obsessed with mass shootings. Authorities discovered he had extensively studied some of the deadliest attacks in U.S. history. Columbine, Virginia Tech, you name it, he had read about it. He didn't just look them up in passing, he analyzed them, studied them. He even created a bizarre ranking system, grading at least 8 serial killers like it was some twisted hobby. And that obsession didn't stop at research. Trey admitted to some chilling behaviors leading up to the murders, things no one saw in his YouTube reviews. He had been killing animals, including family pets, and firing shots near schools in the dead of night, quietly rehearsing his own version of the violence he consumed. Yet despite all that, he had no criminal record. On paper, he was clean, but behind closed doors, it was a different story. After the murders, Trey was immediately placed on suicide watch. Authorities didn't know what had finally pushed him over the edge, but there were signs, clear ones. Psychologists watching the case unfold, like Dr. Gail Gross, said it pointed to a serious mental break. While she never evaluated Trey personally, she recognized the pattern, a slow-burning descent into isolation and detachment. Even his own family had noticed something was off. His great-aunt, Veda Frierson, said he started acting like he didn't even recognize his own relatives. "He almost acted like he didn't know us," she recalled. He had been under some form of treatment, but no one really knew for what. Trey was 22 years old. He had never held a full-time job, rarely left the house, and spent hours upon hours behind a screen, reading about killers, watching violent footage, planning. According to investigators, he had been preparing for years. In his grandmother's yard, news crews later found a small grave, marked with the words, "Forgive me." That same phrase showed up inside his family's home after the massacre. It was like Trey knew exactly what he was doing and hated himself for it. But even that guilt didn't stop him. Dr. Gross summed it up chillingly. When people have psychic breaks, when they split like that, this is what happens. She believes Trey had shown red flags for years and that more people should have stepped in. His isolation, his spiraling obsession, the mental strain, it all built up. And in the absence of real intervention, Trey grabbed control in the only way he knew how, by destroying everything. In August of 2012, 5 months after the murders, Trey Eric Sessler stood before the court and pleaded guilty to killing his mother, father, and brother. No trial, no drawn-out legal battle, just a quiet admission from a man who had shattered his entire world. The sentence was life in prison with no possibility of parole.
I did that, it was like, well, I'm already committed, really. Can't really go to my brother and my dad and be like, yeah, I just killed our mom.
Even if there was no chaos in the courtroom since he admitted to his crimes, the outside world was not so quiet. Word of the sentencing spread fast through Waller, and while some people felt justice had finally been served, others weren't satisfied. Many believed Trey had earned something far harsher, especially considering how methodically he planned everything. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment crime. It was premeditated, it was cold, and it was calculated. Death penalty definitely, said Logan Peavy, a local resident. It had to have been premeditated. He's crazy. Another local, Stanton Ashley, put it simply, people are going to be happy that justice is served, but they're not going to be happy with how it's served. Even within Trey's own extended family, there was heartbreak and a deep, lingering pain. Some family members spoke privately about how his actions had torn apart more than just a household. He fractured a community. But when approached for public comment, they declined. Maybe because the wounds were still too raw, or maybe because there are no words for what he did. Since his arrest, Trey has been held at the Waller County Jail, but not for long. According to the district attorney, he'll soon be transferred to Huntsville, Texas, where he'll be processed and assigned to a permanent prison. And that's where he'll spend the rest of his life, behind bars, cut off from the world he once entertained, the family he destroyed, and the school he nearly turned into a battleground. The boy once known as Mr. Anime is now just inmate Trey Sessler. To truly understand the depth of Trey Eric Sessler's descent, you have to look beyond his home, his YouTube channel, and even beyond Waller, Texas. You have to go back to April 20th, 1999 in Columbine, the day 2 high school seniors, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, walked into their school in Colorado, opened fire, and changed America forever. They killed 13 people and wounded over 20 others before turning their guns on themselves. But the horror didn't end when the gunshots stopped. You might think that the shooting ended with lives lost and lifelong regrets, but no. In the years that followed, Columbine gave birth to something more sinister than anyone could have imagined, a phenomenon now known as the Columbine effect. It was no longer about school shootings. It was now about the culture that formed around them. Harris and Klebold once seen as troubled teens, became twisted icons in certain corners of the internet. They were analyzed, quoted, studied like cult figures by a growing community of disillusioned and disturbed individuals. Forums, blogs, and even fan pages emerged, turning mass murderers into dark anti-heroes. Some were fascinated by their motives. Others wanted to be just like them. And so came the copycats, young men mostly, who idolized the Columbine shooters and wanted to follow in their footsteps. We saw it in Song-Hui Cho, who killed 32 people at Virginia Tech in 2007. He referenced Columbine in his videos and writings, calling the shooters martyrs. We saw it in Alec Manassian, the Toronto van attacker, who was inspired by online subcultures glorifying violence. Even the 2018 Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, posted online about his obsession with school shooters, mimicking the same kind of language Harris and Klebold used. And then there was Trey Eric Sessler. Trey didn't just stumble upon these stories, he was devoted to them. He studied Columbine and Virginia Tech extensively. He researched serial killers. He made lists ranking them. He watched violent footage, took notes, and built fantasies. According to investigators, this wasn't just a passing interest. This was part of his identity. He was planning something for years, and he admitted it himself. He said he wanted to commit a mass shooting at his former high school. He killed his family first, either to spare them from shame or to silence them as witnesses, then drove to the school with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He sat in the parking lot, prepared, ready. But something stopped him. Maybe it was fear, maybe guilt, maybe the weight of reality crashing into his twisted fantasy. Whatever it was, he backed out. But that doesn't erase what he intended to do. Trey, like so many before him, was walking in the bloody footsteps of Columbine, where murder was not just a crime, but a path to infamy. This is the terrifying power of the Columbine effect. It glamorizes violence for those who feel voiceless, invisible, or enraged. It doesn't just inspire violence, it turns it into a blueprint. Trey Sessler might have been just another quiet, lonely guy reviewing anime on YouTube, but under the surface, he was absorbing a narrative that had already captured too many lost minds before him. And in the end, even if he didn't pull the trigger at that school, he still became part of the legacy that Columbine left behind. A legacy not of rebellion, but of tragedy, mimicry, and destruction. And the question that still lingers over Waller, Texas, years later, isn't just why he did it, it's what would have happened if he hadn't stopped himself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.